Okay, we are live.
We need some background music.
Yeah.
We do.
Okay, good evening. Welcome to the September meeting of the North Jersey Astronomical Group. My name is Kevin, and I'm the president of the club. And we are going to start out our evening with some astronomy adventures. This is something we have been doing for the past couple of years. We like to have a presentation by our members of some of the interesting things and interesting places that they've gone in the past year or so, and talk about a little bit of what they've been doing in their astronomy activities. And so we're going to share a couple of different things with you. To start out, we have Christopher Morrow. He is one of our members and also our vice president, and he's going to share with us some interesting photos from the solar eclipse that we had at the beginning of the summer. And so, Chris, if you want to share your screen, go right ahead.
Okay, can everyone see the first slide?
Looks good.
Yep.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm not sure this is going to be that adventurous or exciting, but it's a little bit interesting. It should be fun. We'll have a little fun with it. So the North Jersey Astronomical Group, we decided to meet for the eclipse. What probably was somewhat adventurous was driving up there just after dawn, because we had to get there pretty early, set everything up. Mark had his telescope set up and the laptop. And I believe we broadcast that one as well, Mark, didn't we? I think we did.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
Yes, we actually streamed that over YouTube.
Yes.
Where
So
were
we met at Garrett Mountain on June 10th. So first, let's just talk about the path of that eclipse. So it began somewhere just south of Hudson Bay in Ontario, somewhat north of the Great Lakes, and pretty much carried almost circumpolar through the Bering Sea up into the upper reaches of the Soviet Union, or which is now Russia. So the magnitude was about 94% obscured, and the maximum duration was 3 minutes and 51 seconds. It's part of a Saros cycle number 147, and this is the 23rd of the 80 events. Now, this is a good topic, I think, for some time going forward to talk about eclipse predictions and the different cycles for eclipses. A Saros event occurs about every 18 years and 10, 11, or 12 days, depending on leap years. And that's where the sun and the moon and the earth are in the same relative geometry in their position in the astronomical plane. And the earth rotates below that, which is why the eclipses change their position for each of the Saros events. This one began in 1624 and will end sometime in the year 3049. So the use of Saros goes back to antiquity, and this is a tablet that was discovered that was etched or engraved between 150 and 100 BC, and it uses the word Saros, which is from the Greek. It was Halley who associated Saros with eclipse cycles. And there were a couple of other cycles like the Inex and Metonic as well, which probably would make a good topic to discuss. Here in New York, we had a partial view. We had about 72% obscured, and it occurred between 5:32 a.m. and 6:30. So this was the first glimpse that we got through the clouds of the partial eclipse. And then it got a little bit better. And finally, nice and bright. Now, it was an annular eclipse, and as most of you probably know, it's where the moon's disk relative to the sun's disk is smaller. So in the left-hand side diagram, this portrays the moon being a little closer to the sun. And as a result, there's an area B in the middle where you can get this ring of fire effect. And that would be the anti-umbra. So this is the ring of fire. This was a photo I took back in 2012. There was an annular eclipse in May of that year. And what's interesting about annular eclipses that I didn't realize is that as the moon moves toward the limb of the sun, you can see in there's an area here where it's not as bright. Oh, sorry, I went back. And these are actually the mountain peaks, and the sun's light is filtering through those mountain peaks, so you get some imagery. Now, this was not the best camera in the world. I have a little better equipment now, so I'm looking forward to the next annular eclipse, and I think I'm going to try to get a similar type of photograph. Speaking of which, these are the annular and solar eclipses between 2021 and 2040. So we are up next. We have the next two major eclipses. And the winner for these 2 decades is Australia. They have 4 total eclipses that will crisscross the subcontinent of Australia. So the next 2 will occur on US. The first one is October 14th, 2023. It is an annular eclipse, and it will go from Oregon across the Southwest through Texas. And then April 8th, 2024 will be a total eclipse, and that will run from Texas up through Maine. So make your reservations now, and let's get ready. So one final look at the June 10th eclipse. And thank you.
Great. That was a really nice eclipse, and we had a pretty good view. We had some clouds there, as you can see in those images, but we lucked out with some pretty decent weather to get to see that. So great. Thanks, Chris, for sharing those images.
You're welcome.
Let's see. Next up, what should we do next? Since we're talking about the sun, should we have Terry talk about his solar images next? So Mark, if you want to share those images. Terry, are you still online with us here? You ready to go? Oops. Let me see. Is Terry with us?
Terry, can you hear us?
I think we lost him.
I think we lost him. Okay, we have to come back to Terry, unfortunately. Mark, do you want to go next? Talk about we'll segue into electronic assisted astronomy.
Sure, we'll bounce around. That's fine.
Since we were doing that during the eclipse anyway, so it's still a good segue.
We were actually, which is yeah. Let me start the slideshow from the beginning. So yeah, this was another year of practicing electronic assisted astronomy, or astronomy with a camera. Actually, I'll stop sharing. Oh, Terry just came back in.
Oops.
Okay. So I'll go the camera I used was a same camera that the club has. I own one of these too. It's a ZWO 294 MC Pro. It's a color camera. I used a focal reducer, not always this particular one. This is an inexpensive 0.5 reducer, but with the backspacing. In the C8, it's 6.6 focal reduction. That's what I use for most objects to frame them best. So you guys know, and then we'll go back to the presentation again. So at least you have a little bit of context. Okay, so away we go. And since we were just talking about that same solar eclipse, this were a couple of still shots from that eclipse, and I think that picture Jabbar took of the laptop. So we were all up on Garrett Mountain, pointed northeast at this time. And if you want to look at this, just go to NJAG online, our YouTube page. This is if you want to cut and paste this at any point later on, you can, but just go NJAG online, go there and just scroll through the videos, and this video will be up there. And it takes almost about an hour or so from the sun's disk to go from a nice crescent phase all the way out. I think it was, what did it finish up around 6:30, 7 o'clock?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, it was
Around 6:30 more.
6:30. Okay. Yeah, it's far in my memory now at this point. That was June was ages ago. This is nowhere near as good as Chris's photo, but this actually came out of my iPhone. This is looking northeast, and we'll move on from that. So to go to the nighttime astronomy, I used a bunch of different equipment. Actually, 3 telescopes in particular. I'm using that same 294 Pro camera. I use quite often a Skywatcher Go-To Dobsonian, and that's an f4.6, so that's relatively fast. The C11 at f6.3, and that's got a focal reducer in there. And the C8 at f6 with the same focal reducer you saw just a moment ago. And I usually use either ASI Live, live stacking software. I am going to start playing around with SharpCap, which is a more complex version of live stacking software. So the images should get even better. But needless to say, this is what we've done so far. With the C11, again, you can see the C11 on the right-hand side there. I've done a bunch of different objects, globular clusters, even Jupiter and Saturn, the moon. They all frame pretty well. The moon, maybe not as much, unless you're looking at a small particular part of the moon and, the craters and the terminator. The Dumbbell Nebula, this is in the C11. I'm going to show you the difference between the C11 and the 14-inch Dob and how much a faster scope. These are both at bin 1. If I bin 2, this would have been a brighter nebula, but the stars would have been a little bit more bloated. This was the Swan, and up here is the Crescent Nebula, and these were all done with a UHC filter. I believe this was an Astronomic. Again, here, now this is with the 14-inch Dob, and again, you can see the difference in the dumbbell. This was also bin 1. The difference between the dumbbell between the Dob and the Schmidt-Cassegrain. It's definitely much brighter. You see more detail and whatnot. And same holds true with the Eagle Nebula here, and you can see the Pillars of Creation came out quite nice. Earlier, beginning of summer, this was early June, I did M81 and M82. 81, if I applied some darks to it, it would have come out even better, but you can see quite a bit of detail in the spiral arms here in 81. And I did one with the C8 as well. I did a lot of stuff with the C8, but this is one example, is the Whirlpool Galaxy. One of the other things we did was get the NJAG observatory up and running, and this is with the Club 294 that's up there now. We wound up doing EAA during the summer a few times. Kevin did it as well, and I did it a few times. But we would either use a monitor or a projector and a screen. The projector and a screen actually works out nice. That might be something that we might want to look into later on at some point. This was one I brought from home, and the screen, this was Chris Callie's. He had a spare. And this is, I think we were, not sure if we were pointed at Venus during that time. The telescope was pointed at something. It may not have been Venus, but it was definitely being used there before nightfall. And at nighttime, there was a crowd of people behind a rope. So on the other side, and we were teaching and projecting. Again, it was dark, so you couldn't see the people, but we could see how well this was doing for the events there. This is Terry's picture. Sorry, Terry, I stole your picture here. I hope you don't mind. Kevin, Terry, and myself, we did the Passaic County Highlands Preserve. So basically it's a giant baseball field with 3 diamonds on it. And what we didn't know was the area was fenced off in 3 different directions. So we had to have the telescopes in between the diamonds. And then what wound up happening, I had to go back and forth with a 50-foot cable between Terry's telescope and my own telescope when we went from certain objects to other objects. And then Kevin did the actual presenting. In the background there, you can see an inflatable screen. That was actually kind of ingenious. Has a little fan, a little blower motor back there, keeps the thing inflated. And so the crowd was behind on the other side. This is just, we were setting up before it got dark. We also had our club picnic up at UACNJ. We had a number of people there. It was less than the amount of people that registered, but it was a significant number. Unfortunately, the evening was clouded and rained out. I think Kevin and I got out of there just in the nick of time before everything got really wet really fast. But it was a great event. We got to see the Morris Museum Club, and hopefully next year we can do it again, and hopefully it'll be clear that night and we can use the telescope. One of the other things that NJAG did, and we used my telescope, we used the C11 for, was the virtual Adirondack Astronomy Retreat. For many years, David Levy, the famous comet hunter, the same person that helped discover the Shoemaker-Levy comet, ran this retreat from 2005 until 2017-18, and then in 19 he retired from doing this. Still goes, but then some of the other club members started taking over responsibilities, and so now that's the whole idea. Now we're hoping to redo this again next year in person, COVID permitting, I guess. And that's going to be a lot of fun. This site is pretty amazing. It's got a nice observing field. It's very dark. It makes Jenny Jump look like Clifton. And there's presentations during the day and observing at night, all night observing. So what we did with the virtual retreat, in much in the same way we're doing our presentations now, we did presentations online ahead of observing, and Kevin and I did the EAA part of the observing part for everyone in the retreat, and the NJAG members too decide to come in as well. And this was a lot of fun. This stayed a lot of us. We stayed up till like 11:30 or so in July. We saw a bunch of objects that night. Luckily, it was clear. So really quickly, I'm going to show you, this is probably the most important thing I've done. So I basically recorded a bunch of my sessions throughout the year, and a lot of them in the summertime when it was clear. This is just one of them. So essentially, you get the same effect. Now watch, the image will start building as it starts to stack. I'll fast forward this a little bit, but you can see the telescope move, and the image will start to stack. One image will stack on top of another, on top of another. So these are these might have been 5-second, 10-second exposures. I'm trying to remember what I had to think, 10 seconds. But what this will allow us to do, and I'll give these recordings to the club or copies of them. We'll be able to, on telescope nights that are cloudy, we'll still be able to present something on a screen. It's behind the clouds. The telescope was looking at it at the same time of year. So we're making this library of deep sky objects that are around at certain times of the year. And so we can go out, instead of, doing electronic assisted astronomy through a telescope. If it's cloudy, we could still pull the equipment outside to show everyone the equipment, and you can see that the image is getting better now. We could still do public outreach even during cloudy weather. And this here is the Lagoon Nebula. This is in the direction of Sagittarius, right in between Sagittarius and Scorpius, that you're seeing here. And so this sequence here, I'll fast forward it in a minute. So you can see over time the image builds up and the telescope actually moves. So you get the sensation that there's a telescope moving and pointing. And so I went from there, from the Eagle Nebula, the Lagoon, to the Trifid in this sequence here. This built up the Trifid. I'm going to speed this up so we don't take up all the time here.
Hey, Mark,
Yes.
I was going to ask, during your playback, is it possible to play it back at a faster speed?
I don't think so. I can mess around with it, and there are other video recording devices that will allow you to do that. I don't think OBS allowed me to. I can try a different version or a different one.
Yeah,
yes.
I was thinking for the presentations,
right.
Rather than have people wait, 5 or 10 minutes for the image to build, or whatever.
Oh, it's not necessarily 5 or 10 minutes. It's usually a lot of times it's within a minute or two.
Well, okay. Well,
yeah, it's not that long.
Okay.
It's not that long. It's building. It builds most of its brightness pretty quickly, and then it kind of plateaus off. So I'll bring this along, and here you can see the swan. This, believe it or not, was all with the C8 at f6. But I have other ones, galaxies, other nebulae. I'll pull that over. All right, so and this is the Eagle here, and this is the Pillars of Creation. And so I'm setting up the image here as we move along here. But this will allow a person to talk in front of a screen and talk about the object, and actually teach a little bit. You can see it gets zoomed in. You can see more detail. And I think I finally end up at a glob. This might be M10 and Ophiuchus. This ended up in a globular cluster here, just to round off. I was pointing at everything in that part of the sky at that point. There we are. So yeah, so that's what I've been working on most of the summer. So it allows us to do a public telescope night even when it's cloudy, and it's often cloudy now. So I'd much rather do this in person, but we have a plan B, you know, at least that. And thanks a lot. And again, you can do the moon too. But anyway, I will stop my screen share. And who wants to go next? Is it Terry or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
my apologies. I thought I could use my imaging source webcam to connect to the laptop. I tried to do it, and then I realized, well, you've got to have the software to be able to connect it, so it didn't work. And that's why I cut off. So I'm back at the phone. So yeah,
Okay.
I'm here, Kevin, if you want me to.
Yeah. Mark, could you put up Terry's PowerPoint for him? And
This doesn't need to take long, Kevin. You know,
no, these are just short presentations. So
yeah, just bang, 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 bang through the pictures.
Oh, yeah.
just a little taste of what people have been up to. You know?
Yeah. So, Mark, if you can help me with that, I will comment as you just click through them every few seconds, and
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the best.
If you want me to stop, just say so.
Yeah, it's only if people have questions, and it's just so everyone knows they're in chronological order. So they start from about June and they end up to about 2 or 3 days ago.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Terry, a lot of these are very detailed. I like these.
Thank you. Thank you. I can't see them. Can you? Can
Yeah,
other people?
You're not sharing, Mark.
I'm not?
No.
Ooh, okay, hold on a second.
We're just seeing you and.
Better go back.
Okay, sorry. Why didn't that work? Just a second. Hold on.
More technical problems.
Just give me a second. It could be mental technical problems too, for all we know. All right, here we go. I think I got it.
Okay.
Yeah. No.
There we go.
Yeah.
Get that.
So just click through them.
There you go.
I've just combined the two there just to give you a comparison. Keep going, Mark.
Mm-hmm. These are beautiful. So this is a Daystar filter?
Yeah. Just the comment, just go back on that other one. You can use Photoshop and combine prominences with the chromosphere, and that's what I did there. It takes so much work to do it. I thought, look, I'll just put comparisons up from here on. That was one I did. But you've got to superimpose the chromosphere on top of the solar flare. It's not, for me, it's not worth the effort. Keep going, Mark.
Yep. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Got a loop there going on, magnetic loop.
Yeah.
Again, it's falling back down.
Sunspot.
Yep.
What equipment are you using?
What's that?
That's the solar flare. There's another one.
Hey Terry, what is the diameter of the scope you're using for this?
It's a 5-inch. It's 5 and a quarter or something. 130 mil Meade refractor, Kevin.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it works with that. There's another one. Yeah, this is a recent one. Yeah, there's a lot of features in that.
Yep. Filaments.
There's another loop there. Thank you, Aman.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep going, Kevin. That was a bit overexposed, that one.
September 2nd, that's my birthday.
Oh, that's right. And that's another one. And whatever.
That's cool.
Yeah.
A
So
lot of
that was a recent one. That's the last couple of days. And you've been, I think, Kevin, you posted about sunspots.
Right.
These things have been developing into significant sunspots. I just decided to do planets last night instead of the sun yesterday, so I didn't grab any more of them.
Yeah, there's been a lot of activity recently with
Yeah.
sunspots, and I was just out this afternoon with my solar binoculars to take a look at the 10 by
You can
50s.
see it.
And
Yeah,
they were,
Mary Lou has this nifty solar finder, and one day she was with me, and we could actually see the sunspot on her solar finder.
oh yeah. So, and there was three of the four groups that were on the disc now were pretty easy to spot in the binoculars. So they're
Right.
pretty good size,
Yeah.
nicely developed.
Keep going, Mark. It's another solar flare. That one, yeah, sometimes they're a bit hard to get the right exposure. Here's the equipment. People wondering what it is. There's the day star, that red thing in the middle. There's a reducer above it, that black thing.
Mhm.
And it's an AVX mount. And that's actually visually. Yeah, next one, Mark. Yeah, that's another picture of it. Unfortunately, it doesn't show the full scope, but it shows what it is. And there's a very prominent star there. She's having a good time.
Yeah, looks good.
And there's one more, I think, Mark. Is there? Yeah, that's the actual equipment. And there you can see it's set up with the computer. I put a little mini computer on a table next to it. And the thing on the bottom is the camera. It's a ZWO ASI 174mm, specifically designed for this sort of work. And you can see, Kevin, there the refractor itself. It's got to be, for that filter, it's got to be between F5 and F9, and that's an F7. So it worked out very well. And the AVX mount is great. It just handles it very well, and and it tracks very well, et cetera, et cetera. So that's about it. So it's been, this is cooler weather. It's become a very pleasant exercise to be out in the sun.
Oh yeah.
Entertain my cats.
They watching you from the window?
No, I let them out in the backyard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
Oh, okay.
that's it.
All
Great.
right.
Thank you, Terry. I guess I'll go next, since Mark was talking about summer events, the Adirondack retreat. Let me talk a little bit about stellophane. And I think some of you have heard about this before. I gave a presentation about this a few years back. But for those of you who never heard of it, stellophane is an annual event up in Vermont, in Springfield, Vermont. And it's one of the oldest star parties and the amateur gatherings in the country. The event got started by the Springfield telescope makers, which were founded back in 1923 by a guy named Russell Porter. He was a pretty amazing guy. He was an Arctic explorer and an artist and amateur astronomer as well. Had a pretty interesting life. And he, at some point, became interested in astronomy. In his Arctic adventures, he did do some surveying, and I think that's where his interest in astronomy came from. And where he lived in Springfield, Vermont, was very well known for its tool making industry. And so we had a lot of people around him that were very handy with their building things. And so what he did is he got a group of them together and formed what became the Springfield telescope makers. They taught themselves how to build telescopes, which back in the 1920s was a pretty big thing, because there were obviously a lot of amateur astronomers around before the 1920s. But most of those people, in order to have a telescope, were pretty wealthy, in order to get a telescope. And so this was a way for sort of ordinary people to able to stargaze. They were able to build their own telescopes. So it was a big innovation at the time. And they built telescopes out of pipes and stovepipes and whatever stuff they could find. And so so they formed the Springfield Telescope Makers, and that actually sparked in the end, and it ended up sparking a big renaissance in amateur astronomy. And so this is a very historic place for amateur astronomers. And they started having an annual convention, and has continued almost every year. There's been a couple of gaps during World War II and after Russell Porter passed away, and of course due to COVID. But it's been a very long-standing event, and this is really a place of pilgrimage for amateur astronomers all over the country. This is the clubhouse at Stellafane, where the club got started, and we were really shocked when Heidi and myself have been going almost every year for many years to this event, and but a few years ago we couldn't. We kind of stopped going on a regular basis, and we were shocked that it was 6 years. We hadn't been there in 6 years. We couldn't believe it. We thought it was we haven't been to Stellafane in a few years. No, it was like 6 years. So it was like a 6-year gap, and so it was really nice to be able to get up there and see a lot of the people that we know from Stellafane. And Stellafane is a kind of rustic place. If you go up to this event, most of the people are camping on the property, and so you're going to find whatever space that you can to set up your equipment and your tents. The site up there has expanded over the years from the original Stellafane clubhouse and observatory. They expanded to what is now known as Stellafane East, and this is the McGregor Observatory, which houses a 13-inch Schuppmann telescope, which is a very complicated and quite nice design telescope. And so this is an observatory that was built in the mid-90s, and this is where the kind of main observing field is for the convention. And so here's a little domed observatory. I think there's a 12-inch telescope inside of that. And people are set up here on the observing field. And here's a little rookie mistake that I made for Stellafane. Stellafane is known, if you know Vermont is well known. Vermont summers are blazing hot during the day and sometimes freezing cold at night. And that makes for some pretty bad dew conditions sometimes as the temperature drops. And so I unfortunately, I made a mistake. I had a dew zapper with me. But unfortunately, I didn't have the right power supply, so that left me without any protection against zoom, which is really a bad thing to happen at Stellafane. And so I ended up improvising. My first night, I kind of got dewed over very, very quickly, but I went to the local dollar store and picked up some black construction paper, big sheets of poster paper, I should say, and made myself my own little dew cap. And fortunately, it worked, and I had a good night observing on the second night. So we had 2 good nights of nice skies for Stellafane. Long before there was cloudy nights or astromart, Stellafane has also been famous for its swap meet, its swap tables, except for when it rains and it gets kind of muddy, they change the name to swamp tables. And sometimes you see some pretty interesting things. This telescope was spotted at this year's swap meet, and this is I don't know if anyone recognizes this. This is a fairly rare Fecker, 4-inch Fecker telescope. And you don't see too many of these around. They're really unusual telescopes that were built back in the 50s and 60s. It's a style of a telescope called a bent Cassegrain. Unfortunately, I do not have another shot of it, but it's a Cassegrain type telescope, but it's got a 3rd mirror in it, and that sends the light out to the side of the tube instead of the back for a little bit more convenient viewing. And so it was kind of nice to see one of those for sale. at the swamp meet here, Swamp Tables. Another unusual telescope that was for sale by one of its owners. As I was walking by, this was a little table manned by Gary Hand, that many of you probably know, and he said, "Here, take a picture of this." I said, "Why?" Well, I said, "This is really quite rare. This is a 4-inch astrophysics, one of the very early astrophysics 4-inch refractors. I believe it's a triplet, and so this was handmade by Roland Christensen, and so a very rare telescope these days. I have no idea how much he wanted for it. I didn't even ask because I knew I could not afford it. So I just took a picture and off I went to look at some of the other stuff at the Swamp Tables. One of the, speaking of unusual telescopes, one of the most unusual telescopes at Stellafane is the observatory in front of the clubhouse that was built in 1930. Vermont gets very cold in the winter, and you don't want to be outside in that. And so Russell Porter came up with this idea of this observatory where you could observe from inside the observatory. And how they do this is that this observatory, by the way, is made of concrete, giant concrete dome, and the telescope is incorporated into the dome. There's a flat mirror sitting here, so this mirror points at different parts of the sky and sends the light to the primary mirror, which is sticking out on this platform here. And the primary mirror focuses the light on this little hole that goes inside the observatory and into an eyepiece, or in this case, they're projecting an image of the sun onto the inside of the dome. And so you can sit inside the dome and you've got a little steering wheel and some gears you can turn. You can move the telescope around the sky and point at different parts of the sky and view in nice warm comfort while it's cold outside. So kind of a very clever design that's unique to Stellafane. And Stellafane has been around for a very long time, and they were very proud to show this off this year in a new addition to the original historic site. It originally had some different types of solar instruments installed in the clubhouse, so they decided to build this, which is a similar instrument. This is a spectrohelioscope, and how this works is that this is the flat mirrors here in this little doghouse that rolls off and exposes the mirrors to the sky, and the light reflects off of this mirror, bounces off another one, and then goes through a hole in the building. And inside the building, there is, which I don't have a diagram of it, but inside the building is where you sit and you look through the eyepiece. And you can, for example, look at the sun, look at the spectrum of the sun, and you can also look at H alpha images of the sun as well. So very nice demonstration of how a spectrohelioscope works. Very, very cool little instrument, which is the latest one that's been added to the site. Some people refer to Stellafane as a star party, but really it's an amateur telescope making contest. That's what really is the heart of Stellafane. So they've continued the telescope making tradition for all of these decades. And so here we have a big group of people that have their telescopes on display for the judges to go around and decide who has the best built telescope. And so you see all kinds of different telescopes during the contest. You see ordinary scopes like Dobsonians, like this one. You see more unusual telescopes. This guy is standing over here with the baseball cap on. That's Simon. And Simon, if I remember correctly, is from Westfield, New Jersey. And he entered into the contest the idea of a portable radio telescope. And so he got a radio telescope design off of the internet, and he built it. And then he added it to a little cart that has bicycle wheels on it, so you can pick it up and kind of roll it around and point at different parts of the sky. And so it was really kind of a clever little portable radio telescope that he had built. You see some pretty unusual designs. Here's a sort of beam scope. This is a Newtonian telescope with no tube. You see these every now and again at Stellafane. This one, I think, was also built by someone from New Jersey as well. The judges you can see they're standing around giving this telescope some scrutiny. There are a couple of things they didn't like about it. It was a little too shaky, the mount design. So they didn't like it like that, but it was a pretty interesting little scope. Sometimes people build different gadgets and put them on display. This was a collimation aid. You know, a lot of people use artificial stars in order to collimate their telescope optics. And this person decided that instead of collimating at just one point, he would build this kind of matrix of LED lights and pinholes that he could use to collimate his optics across the whole field. It's kind of interesting. Here's another telescope maker who built a little Dobsonian binoculars, pair of binoculars. It's got two reflectors. I think they're fairly small mirrors, maybe a 4 or 5 inch mirror. And he built two of them, and they're stacked one on top of the other. And the light from the bottom one goes through the tube of the top one, and you've got your eyepieces there at the top. It's like a pair of binoculars. So there's a nice little binocular telescope that he built. Here's a fellow, I believe is this, I think this guy's name is Michael. He's from Vermont, and he built a wooden equatorial telescope, all built out of wood. I thought his counterweight design was pretty clever. You know, he's got some regular, you know, lifting weights, you know, gym weights, but he's got sandwiched between two wooden rails that he can move the counterweight up and down to balance the telescope. I thought that was kind of a nice design. And you see all kinds of homemade things, you know, people go and build their own focusers, you know, from scratch. And so you see some pretty interesting things on these telescopes. Little wooden octagon shaped or hexagon shaped telescope there, aldazimuth, 6 inch, I think. This is Dave Kelly from Massachusetts. He's been part of Stellafane for many years and has entered many telescopes into the competitions. This was his latest. I forget what size this is, but this is probably a good 15, 16 inch diameter truss tube telescope that he built from scratch as well. So very nice job there. You also see quite a few kids entering telescopes. The Stellafane does try to encourage the Springfield telescope makers to try to encourage kids to enter into the telescope contest. And so here was one young lady's entry to a very nice truss tube Dobsonian telescope that she built. Another gadget, this person 3D printed a turret for his eyepiece turret for his telescope as well. So well done with a 3D printer. Here's someone you may recognize. This is Alex Varakin. Alex is from Parsippany. You may spot him up at Ginny Jump every now and then. He's one of the observers. And he built himself a beautiful, almost 15, I think it was a 14.7 inch diameter Dobsonian telescope with lots of really interesting features. Again, a truss tube, and he built a sort of digital setting circles for it, which he mounted on the back. You may recognize this as a battery charger from Power Tool. You know, he used the casing in order to mount his little pointing system there. You can see the secondary suspended by wires through this big wires spider, holding up the secondary mirror. One really clever thing was that there are no collimation screws for the primary mirror on the back. He designed the system where you use the rods, the support rods for the truss. To collimate the mirror, you actually grab the actual rod and turn the whole rod, and that moves the mirror around so you can collimate your telescope. A very clever little design. And in fact, actually, he won an award for this. He won, I think it was the Mechanical Design Awards, or he won first place for this telescope, which was really cool to see that. Someone from New Jersey winning the contest, part of the contest. And Saturday night, the big sort of end of the convention is the talks and the awards and the big raffle that they do at the end of the convention. And so it was a nice night. Unfortunately, it was a little too cloudy, and so we didn't get to do any observing on the final night. But to give you an idea of what the skies are like when it's clear, here's a view from the second night of Stellafane. You can see my makeshift dew cap there sticking into the picture. This is Jupiter and Saturn over to the southeast sky. And the skies there are pretty dark, but you can see there's a little bit of glow from Springfield distance there. It's not quite as dark as it used to be, but it's still pretty dark. And so here we have a little piece of the Milky Way. This is an unprocessed image. This is straight out of a 35 millimeter camera, DSLR that was piggybacked on the back of my 8-inch Celestron. And so you see a nice little bit of the Milky Way there. There's Altair, and you can see the Sagittarius star clouds here going down pretty close to the horizon there. So you had a pretty nice sky up there. Now here's a shot overhead. I think this is, this is the summer triangle. So this is looking almost straight up right there. There's a summer triangle. See a nice piece of the Milky Way running across the sky. And so nice to get away for a little bit and go back to Stellafane the first time in several years and enjoy some beautiful dark skies and take a look at interesting telescopes. And so hope you enjoyed that. A little presentation about Stellafane. Let's see, what else do we have on our list here? What was our last speaker? Oh no, not last speaker, Omar. We wanted to talk to Omar about some of his galaxy images, I believe. Omar, are you there? I see Omar was in our.
All right, can you guys hear me okay?
Oh yeah, we can hear you, sure.
All right, just making sure. I've got a mic sometimes that acts up on me. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
So if you, let me see if I can share my screen. And I will. And I have to apologize. I just slapped this together in about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So basically, I had the opportunity to do some imaging early in the season on some galaxies in conjunction with testing out equipment that I've been acquiring this year. So first target up is M51 that I actually shot with the I believe this was with the RASA. Trying to remember the camera. I know this was with the UHC filter, which is from Astronomics, and I believe this was done with a CCD camera. I believe it was the one from SX Trius 825 Pro. Don't recall the amount of exposures on this because unfortunately some of these images I just didn't get time to jot that down. But again, it's M51, and this one actually was processed with using Adobe Photoshop mostly, cleaning this up a little bit and exposing some of the dust clouds that are contained within the galaxy. Next one up that I had the opportunity to do was just another wide shot. This is of M81, M82. Again, this one was, I believe, also done with the RASA, but this was done with the ASI 2600 mono camera, which is a great camera. That's, I believe it's 3.76 microns, great sensitivity. Again, processed with Adobe just to clean the image up a little bit. And trying to see what else we had on this one here. Okay. Again, the next one up, this is just M81, where I was also testing this out with the AUHC filter. This was a 12-second exposure, roughly 32 frames that were captured. This was also, again, this is, gain 20 degrees Celsius, negative 20 was the camera was cooled. This one was also done with I believe this was the Trius, if I remember correctly. It was either the Trius or the 2600 mono, one of the two. Another one that actually came out pretty decent was M101. Again, this was also slightly processed. This again was with the RASA 11. This one was done with the 294 ASI mono. So this one actually came up pretty nice, considering that most of these images are actually taken in my backyard with the scope sitting on a deck in a Mark, what are we, a Bordeaux 8 sky in this area?
Yeah, Bordeaux 8, you're the outer white zone. So it's the same as, technically the same as Montclair.
Right.
Yeah.
So then, after going through some of the, common targets that we've gone through, I tried to go for a couple of things that I've, haven't really had the opportunity to image in the past. Some of these are, they're kind of small in size on the major minor axis. This one is, I believe this is M106. This was also done with the Astronomic AUHC filter. This was definitely done with the RASA, Trias 825. This was roughly 10 exposures, about 120 seconds in total. So this was quick, fast exposures that I was just collecting. And this is early on when I first got the Trias 825 while I was testing out that camera. So this one here, this is also done on the RASA with the Trias 825. This is NGC 4236. This was 180 seconds, 52 exposures. This was the digital gain was bumped up on this a little bit, but again, considering my sky conditions, this actually came out pretty decent. This one here is NGC 4653, again, AUHC, again, the ROS 11 and the Trias 825 mono. So this one was also roughly about 160 seconds worth of exposures. So I think this was roughly about 15 or 20 exposures in total. Again, cleaned up in Adobe Photoshop.
Omar, quick question for you.
Yes, sir.
Is that the Whale Galaxy, the one before this?
I believe, and let me see. I believe the Whale Galaxy. That's not the Whale Galaxy. I have the Whale Galaxy coming up in a separate photo.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Look very similar. Yeah.
Yep. No worries. This one right here was just something. I just went after the Virgo cluster, just to get it. While I had the opportunity. This was also done with the Trias 825 AUHC. 28 exposures. Bumped up the digital gain a little bit, but really never went back and kind of finalize the processing on it. I find myself sometimes that I collect way more data than I'm able to process, and I'm playing catch up, and I'll start it, but I never go back and put the final touches on it. But in any event, this is a Virgo cluster. It's a wonderful collection of galaxies that are spread, quite a distance. I'm trying to recall. I think that's a radius of about 7.5 million light years, give or take. So. And I think it actually contains almost over 1,300 member galaxies, so, I mean, there's a lot of small faint fuzzies that we're just not seeing, but still it's a wonderful, wonderful area to image, especially when you're doing wide field astrophotography. Next image I've got up, this is the Whale Galaxy. Okay, this was done with the RASA as well. This was a tough one to get for me that night, just because I didn't have the optimal weather conditions. This was, I think, roughly 757 seconds. And then, I tried to keep the processing, as minimal as, well, not as intrusive as possible to take away any of the detail within the galaxy. So I tried to bring out some of the cloud structure that's in the galaxy and some of those dark lanes that are in there. Now, the next picture I want to show you, which is not a galaxy, but it's one that I'm still kind of working on. I did this also early in the year. This is the jellyfish. And this one was actually done with the RASA 11 with the 20 ASI 2600 mono. This was utilizing the Astronomic HA S203 filters. So this is an image I'm still going back and I'm tweaking, as time allows. But again, it's one of my favorite targets to go after. So on that note, some new equipment that I've added. So we've got another dome now sitting in my backyard. This is the next dome, which I just finished not too long ago. And what you see behind there now is the C14. And that the scope on top is actually the ASCAR FRA 400 for wide field. And that's side saddled with the Borg Mini 45, which I'm kind of debating whether I want to use that for guiding or not. I'm not sure. I actually had the opportunity last night after recovering from the remnants of Hurricane Ida, because this dome was actually flooded out. I had probably about 4 feet of water in the backyard. So probably right about to the middle of the door, you know. But luckily the scope wasn't damaged, nor was the mount. But in any event, got the T-point done on this finally last night. So looking forward to finally getting some imaging done with that. And
That a sky shed pod or a next dome?
I'm sorry, yeah, this is the Sky Shed pod, which I will be doing the PZT modification either later this year or sometime next year. So it basically becomes a quasi roll-off, which actually last night to get that T-point done, I took, my son and I took that dome off, laid it on the ground because it was just much easier to do the T-point. And yeah, there's a wall behind me, but that wall is kind of west-north, so which it still leaves me plenty of sky to look at, going from the northeast right on down to southwest. So it's unfortunately it's just, but I'm adjacent to Route 80, and that's the sound deadening wall that they've got there. So yeah, I've got no jurisdiction to knock the wall down. Oh, and no, before I go there, as always, I like to name my domes. This dome is actually named the Kronos Observatory. And if anybody here is a Star Trek fan, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay. Kronos is the planet, is the home planet for the Klingon race. One of my favorites, and still an ongoing project, which I'm going to hopefully have the opportunity to talk about next month and during next month's meeting, Next Dome Observatory. And this has been a constant, never-ending project, but I think I'm finally seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. What you're seeing there on the right is actually the shutter motor, which I modified to add a second motor to help with improving the opening and closing of the shutter. I just wanted to, it was a modification that I undertook with the help of someone else who owned the Next Dome that was located in France. And that's the wonderful thing about getting into some of these projects, because the user base is so wide and far, and there's so many resources out there, globally, that you can always reach out and get help in doing some of the needed modifications. But what this dome is particularly housing right now is a new acquisition, which I still haven't had the chance to get some imaging done, but it's a Takahashi BRC 250 that I just also recently acquired, that not sure exactly how long I'm going to keep it for, but I've got several people who are already after me wanting to purchase the scope. But I was excited to get it. I still may wind up doing some imaging before I let it depart. And that's basically it.
Great. So sounds good. Sounds like you've been busy. Okay. I think our last speaker was Jeff. Jeff, do you want to talk a little bit about the annual picnic? I know Mark mentioned it, but if there's anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, not much to add to it. We had about a dozen guys showed up. We had a barbecue going, burgers and hot dogs. I think a guy named Anthony was on that. I helped out a little bit by throwing one of those invasive bugs that somebody told me about on there. Gave a nice flavor to the burgers, I think. And had some salads and chit chat, and and if I'm not mistaken, Mark was in there giving a little tour of the observatory. Is that true, Mark?
Yes, we were showing the folks from MMAS the observatory, its functions, how it works with a computer. I think we even pointed it to Venus during the daytime.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we did. Right.
Yeah, that's about all I have to add there.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks, Jeff. Hopefully we can do that again next year as well. I think that was all we had planned for our presentations tonight. If anyone has anything to add to that, any other interesting astronomy adventures that they've been on recently, please feel free to.
Yeah,
speak
Kevin,
up.
I just last night, as I said, spontaneously decided to pull out my 8SE Celestron. And so I did take some, videos of the planets. It was a beautiful night last night to be observing, especially for planets anyway. So I sent them out to the NJAG, email thing, the group.
Yeah.
So anyone wants to have a look and tell me. I put a bunch of them up there because it was such a pleasant night last night. I just kept taking these video shots. Tell me which ones you think are the best, and
great.
Otherwise I'll decide myself. Yeah. Good.
Okay, great. Thanks. Sounds good. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our presentations for this evening, though please do stick around. We do have some things to discuss regarding the club. We'll start our business meeting here in just a moment.